afternoon and welcome to the NGOCC podcast. This one is the NGOCC at 40 podcast. And on today's episode, I'm privileged to chat with the former Republican Vice President, Madam Inonge Mutukwa Wina, who served as NGOCC Board Chairperson from 1998 to 2001. And today we are going to interact with her regarding the history of NGOCC, her tenure as NGOCC Board Chairperson, but also learn some things from her as a woman who took up leadership, but most importantly, the first woman to assume the position of the Vice President in the great nation of Zambia. Good afternoon and welcome to the NGOCC podcast.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you.
I'm happy to be here and so honored to have a conversation with you. Let's start from getting to know you. Share with us your professional background, your career, how you started, and just generally your growing up and how you saw yourself, if you ever imagined yourself being vice president at any point.
That is a very important and difficult question because no one ever thinks that one day I'll be this or I'll be the, except the professionals, I suppose. But let me start by saying that I'm an ordinary Zambian woman. I was born in a village in Naroro district many years ago. And I grew up in the village, went to school in the village until later in my life. I graduated to go to higher schools and ended my career of education back to UNZA. I went as far as the United States to do a diploma in social sciences.
Nice.
Then I came back to Zambia to continue with my education. That time I was already married, but I continued with my education. And I did continue with my social sciences again. I ended with a diploma in social work. And embarked on a BA degree, where I was studying sociology and history. This was now at UNZA. And there in my fourth year, I had my second baby and it was impossible for me to continue. But still, I continued at home. And that is the background of my education. I married a politician. When I married him, he was not a politician.
Okay.
But he came from a family of politicians as well. His father, Mr. Ngocc Wina, my late husband's father, was the Prime Minister of Baroseland then, now it's Western Province, for almost 15 years. And Arthur Wina, my late husband, was the Minister of Finance in the Kaunda government in 1964. It was a very young cabinet. He was one of the cabinet ministers who was under 40. He was 33, I think, at the time. I did join the women's movement early in my life, as a teenager, in fact. And later on continued with voluntary work. I served in the women's movement as a volunteer for more than 30 years without pay. Just to show you how committed I was to the women's cause and to the vulnerable groups that I worked with. So I joined the YWCA in the 60s, in fact 50s, as a young woman. I grew through the YWCA. I became the General Secretary for a few years and rose in the ranks as a member, then elected to the board, then in 1998. The YWCA, as a member of the NGOCC, sponsored me to stand for elections at the NGOCC Assembly.
General Assembly. Yeah.
Yes. And I became chairperson of NGOCC in September 1998.
Now, let's talk about the establishment of NGOCC. I bear in mind that YWCA is one of the member organizations that was part of the founding of NGOCC, firstly as a committee and finally a coordinating council. How was that journey like?
As a matter of fact, the NGOCC started from YWCA and it was housed in the YWCA as a secretariat for a year or so.
Nice.
Until NGOCC was able to find its own space. NGOCC started after the Beijing Conference on Women. And this brings us to this year now. And as we commemorate the 40 years of NGOCC, I want you to take a few steps back. Because in 1998, when I took over as the chairperson of NGOCC, it was 3 years after the Beijing Conference on Women. And the Beijing Conference, which was organized by the United Nations, meant for the whole world. All member states of the United Nations converged in Beijing, and they came out with a blueprint on how the empowerment of women should be undertaken and implemented as quickly as possible. So the women in the world everywhere were excited and very hopeful that this milestone will now open doors for women to emerge from the shadows of oppression, of inequality, of poverty, of exploitation, of hunger, illiteracy, domestic violence, and other social injustices. And they claim their own space in the governance of their countries. And as chairperson of NGOCC then, my vision was to see women mobilized into a formidable group to advance the gender agenda, where our society will become aware of the need for women and men to work together and be given equal opportunities in the development of their country. So I found that NGOCC, being a membership organization, is very, very diverse. I don't know how it is today, but during my time, NGOCC was composed of many NGOs and even community-based organizations.
Faith-based.
So I don't know whether today the situation is still the same.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Now, when you assumed leadership as NGOCC board chairperson, what was your vision for the women's movement? Or what were some of the things that you said during my tenure, we need to ensure that this is changed, or such and such policies are put in place to ensure that lives for the women in Zambia are better, and most importantly, there's gender equity and equality achieved?
First and foremost, my biggest interest was to make our society appreciate the role that women were already playing in our society. for our society to realize that Zambia cannot progress, or Zambia cannot really achieve prominence in the world without involving the women. And that the women have to be appreciated as contributors to their society. So this has been the driving force behind my work. It pleased me when I discovered in the NGOCC that we had all types of members, big NGOs, very professional women like women, university women, the doctors, the lawyers, the writers, and also women from small groups in Mapatija, in Irundazi, in Senanga. That gave me hope that this is the nucleus of the foundation of women coming together. And throughout my work with NGOCC, we were focusing on bringing women together. But with these many groups within the association, it meant also that each organization came with its own expectations. And how to meet the expectations of the varied groups was not that easy. But I must point out that diverse interests or diverse groups can be a blessing, because there is power actually in diversity. There's a lot you can learn from each other. And this can enrich the life of the organization. There's a lot of expertise, particularly between in the well-established NGOs, but that expertise can also help to bring up the smaller groups of CBOs, and they learn from the bigger ones.
So, like, during your 10 years NGOCC board chairperson, what are some of the milestones that you achieved that you can look back at and say, when I was NGOCC board chairperson, this is the major thing that we achieved as a movement for the women in Zambia?
We did achieve a lot. Mind you, the tenure of office bearers on the board of NGOCC is very short.
It's very short.
Extremely short, but within this short time, I must say we made a lot of accomplishments. And one of the most significant milestones during my tenure was through Movement 2000, what we called Movement 2000. I'm sure in your office you must have come across it. Movement 2000 was a project meant to touch every part of Zambia and strengthen collaboration among NGOCC member organizations. Indeed, the project played a critical role in establishing strong provincial structures in the organization. And this project enabled us to focus on key themes, including women in decision-making, gender-based violence, women's economic empowerment. And the NGOCC, I must admit, became more of a national organization than Lusaka-based. And to me, that was a big achievement. The second achievement was adoption of the national gender policy by government, because we had been advocating and lobbying for the national gender policy to direct the development of the empowerment of women. And this was done during our time. The third thing we achieved also was the acquisition of a very valuable real estate asset, Bungano House, on Rubu Road in Long Acres area. And for the first time, the women felt they had their own space, their own center. So that was quite an achievement. Again, NGOCC participated in the debt cancellation. This country was very indebted at the time, in the 90s. And government had to work hard, but the civil society organizations, including NGOCC, were more active in pronouncing the needs of the people, how people were getting impoverished because of the debt. And this was done under the HIPIC initiative. NGOCC was there to participate with other civil society organizations. I would say I'm a very proud person to say that NGOCC was instrumental in bringing together civil society to form a very strong front in support of the Constitution and constitutionalism. This was during the third term campaign. I think that time maybe you were still in school. NGOCC proved to be a very strong partner in the Oasis Forum.
Let's talk about some of the challenges that you encountered, especially back in the days when you were serving as NGOCC board chairperson. Fostering mindset change wasn't as easy, maybe because of the levels of the illiterate levels that we had in the country. Women were only getting exposed then to gender equity and equality. They were just being introduced to the fact that they equally can assume leadership roles, they can go to school, they can be well taken care of. And because you were now dealing with community-based organizations from remote parts of the country, Lundazidwa, Monzedwa, and other community-based organizations that you dealt with, what are some of the challenges that you encountered and how did you overcome them by ensuring that organizations stay strong and that you still achieved your main goal and objectives?
Mindset change takes ages, takes years. But I must say over a period of time, I have seen a lot of change in the thinking of how men and women relate. The acceptance of women as partners in development, and even in the homes, I think it's taking root slowly. It was not easy during our time. You visit a village and you talk about, the need for you, Mrs. So-and-so, to be in the council, to represent us. They will just look at you and say, me as a woman, I cannot manage. But now the situation has changed due to the advocacy that has been going on for years. Secondly, when you deal with issues of fighting for human rights of people, it's not easy. I'll give you an example. Sometime in the year 2000, I was arrested together with the 37 others, men and women, locked up in one cell in the Lusaka Central Police. Why? Because we were petitioning the Inspector General of Police to investigate the cases of 4 girls, young girls, who were murdered in the Charleston area. You can see that even the police, I think, were surprised. Why should these women worry about a case like this? We worried because we noticed that there was some sort of lack of seriousness during that time in investigating matters that affected women. During our time, you would go to report a case to the police station of domestic violence, and you'll be told, no, this is a domestic matter. Can you go back home and resolve your issues? But now things have changed. Why? Because of the continued advocacy by the women's movement on how women should be looked in another light than what we think should be their station in life. Again, in the year 2000, I mentioned earlier that we embarked on this Movement 2000 project. This was aimed also to increase the numbers of women in decision making. Now, we noticed that after our attempt, after many meetings with political parties, the participation of women in the elections was there as campaigners, as voters, but at the end of the road, the number of women elected as members of parliament or as councillors was minimal. So here I raise a red flag, especially to take note that we still have a fight. I want to indicate that the women's movement and the gender-sensitive men should continue to address the issue of women in politics and to address this matter very seriously. The commercialization of politics in Zambia, the candidate adoption methods within political parties, and above all, the continued patriarchal hegemony in the Zambian society will eventually eliminate women from political participation. We were coming up very well. The numbers were increasing in parliament slowly, but of late we noticed that the numbers are decreasing. Let alone the numbers in councils. And women are fought everywhere where they make a mark. We thank the President Lungu, who realized the need and appointed me as the first Republican Vice President. And I must thank the current President, Mr. Hakainde, who also followed suit and appointed another woman as the Republican Vice President. But this is not enough. One woman at the helm cannot change the composition, cannot change all the structures of decision making. Yes, you can make a small impact, but we need massive impact to have more women who can decide on issues that affect them, more women who can decide on how our country should be managed. So the red flag is still there, and the NGOCC and the member organizations have to raise it as we move on.
Interesting. Now, you've tackled a very important aspect, which is women's participation in politics. You could run us through your political journey. How was it? How you joined politics? And also your experience of being the first Republican Vice President of Zambia.
Although perhaps politics was in my blood already.
Certainly.
But we decided in this home that two of us, my husband and I, cannot be in politics at the same time. Apart from that, I entered politics in 2001. I indicated to you that the women's movement decided at the time that we should see more women in politics, and that the women's organizations themselves should produce women to stand in the elections through the political parties that they preferred. And I was one of those. I had no intention, actually, to stand in elections, but I was more or less persuaded. Then I won my seat. It was not easy because I found there were 10 men already canvassing to be candidates. But when I went on the scene and mobilized women, the women, I must say, helped me to get to Parliament because we worked very hard and we worked in harmony. And I believe women can work together. That's why sometimes this myth of women pulling each other down, sometimes I don't understand it. And I believe that it can be overcome. So I was able to be in Parliament for 5 years as a backbencher for Nalolo constituency in Western Province. Then I tried to stand again in 2006 and I lost. There are many reasons that I cannot start narrating here because otherwise it will take the whole day. But I lost the seat, but I told my people that I will be back because as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing a service to the constituency. So I continued with my community work in the constituency. I even managed to donate an ambulance for the constituency, because before that, I saw the suffering of women on Ngocc At being taken to the rural health centers, pregnant women giving birth on the way or the baby dies and that sort of thing. So I went to the extent of designing a Ngocc At with a mattress and a canopy and pulled by donkeys.
Nice.
So I made all these, we constructed these Ngocc Ats in all the rural centers in Nalolo. So after I was in Parliament for 5 years, I said, no, let me go beyond Ngocc Ats. I organized resources, I mobilized for resources to buy an ambulance. And I handed over this ambulance when I was not a member of Parliament, but because I wanted to help the community. So I lost and I stayed for another 5 years. In 2011, I went back to Nalolo to contest my seat. And somehow, I think the electorate maybe compared notes with the new MP. I said, no, we'll go with our old MP.
Nice.
So I won the seat and came to Parliament. This time around, I was not a backbencher anymore. I was made Minister of Chiefs and Traditional Affairs. I was the first minister to head such an institution, and the institution itself was new. So I had to find my way of maneuvering how to make this ministry function well, how we make our traditional leaders work with government in development, and how we empower them to do this work. So I was Minister of Chiefs for a few years, and the president then, Mr. Sata, decided to transfer me to the Ministry of Gender, because women had been crying for a gender ministry. Why? Because they realized that some of the issues that are discussed to empower women, they do not get to cabinet. Although the gender division was under the president then, there was really no direct voice from the division to the president. It was more or less like advisory. But when the Ministry of Gender was created, it gave us a lot of impetus to ensure that the gender agenda is articulated even in cabinet, so that the cabinet ministers at least can be aware of how their partners feel, how it is important to have women to have women decide on issues that affect them. You realize that the woman in the village is the one who draws water daily for the cooking, for washing, for everything. The woman is the one who has to struggle with the environment to get wood for
Firewood.
Yes, for cooking. It's the woman who has to walk 10 kilometers to the nearest health facility to take a sick baby. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to deciding where do we put this borehole, it's the men who decide, isn't it? Yeah. Because they are the majority in the council. So there are certain things that relate to our everyday life that affect women, and women have no decisions over these things. It's just a small example I want to give you. When I joined my party, the Patriotic Front, after 2 years or so, I became the national chairperson of the party. So that gave me a lot of power to have my voice heard in the party. Unfortunately for us, we lost the president of the party, and now there was a struggle from especially men to take over the party presidency. That gave me some insight in the ambitions of politicians, and it helped me to analyze and understand the situation of a leader in a party. So we were in a crisis in the party. The president had died. The vice president was refusing to cooperate with the membership, especially with the Central Committee, and the party was being torn in pieces by people who were vying for positions. Mm. And also, of course, the opposition was taking advantage. So in my capacity as chairperson of the party, I had to work very hard day and night to ensure that I bring cohesion, I bring peace in the party, and we agree on moving together to choose a president. History is known how that was done, and eventually we were able to find one among us who could lead us through the ballot. Of course, we had to vote. Now, after that fracas in the convention, we came out as one, and that pleased me a great deal. So after elections, I was appointed as vice president, and this was a new thing for everybody. For my party colleagues, they were very concerned that perhaps a woman may not be able to fulfill this role. For the women, they were cheering, now we have a woman in place, in position. For the other part, the other segments of the community, it was, let's wait and see whether this woman will make it or not. As you know, a vice president's role mainly is to be leader of government business, especially in parliament. The administration of parliament, the conduct of members of parliament, and the bills to be passed in parliament, and all sorts of parliamentary work. It's a lot of work. But somehow, I think we tried. That is not for me to say, but is for the general public to say. So as a vice president, you find that your work is more, apart from this parliamentary work I'm talking about, and mobilizing ministers under certain portfolios to take certain actions on the very important issues like environment. You have a council of ministers and you have to chair that meeting because there are several ministers. Like disaster issues, although they are in the office of the vice president, the disasters affect a wide range of areas and also of the geographical sites in the country. So the vice president chairs such meetings. In the beginning, I think I remember the first session of Parliament, and I stood up to speak during the vice president's question time. I was a bit jittery myself, but after a while, I said, well, this is just a normal life I have to face head on. Then afterwards, at tea, I saw a lot of ministers coming to my office from my party. Said, well, what wrong have I done? I said, no, we just want to thank you. We didn't know you would make it. Can you see?
Yeah.
We didn't know you would make it, and we are proud that you did. And well, I think because we are never given a chance. I think when we are given a chance, we can perform. We have our own shortcomings, but there are certain things we can do when we have the privilege of being given that opportunity. So that is what I can say about being a vice president. Yes, I was saying that it's mainly advisory to the president. So the president may take your advice or not. So you can see that for you, the young generation, you should fight hard to have a woman president than just an advisor.
Yes. We'll work towards that trajectory. Now, in conclusion, NGOCC turns 40. Quite a big milestone, and it is huge for the women's movement in Zambia. What is the one thing that you can look back at, or rather your reflection towards this milestone of NGOCC commemorating 40 years?
I would say my time as chairperson of NGOCC really was about building strength, uniting voices, and making sure that women were not only heard, but also empowered to act. I notice on Zambian television, I see women being interviewed in an area, a market is burnt down, or a well has not been sunk properly. It's just a voice and it ends there. And someone who will decide later as to what we do now, the woman is not there. So I think we need to include women in whatever transactions we do as a country. And I would say that the foundation laid during the period we were in office has continued to shape the trajectory of women's participation in Zambia's governance and development. We now see women heading banks. We now see women heading the police. We now see women heading the Supreme Courts, the Constitutional Courts. So we are making progress, but this progress is too slow for me. I think we should have gone much further than where we are today. And my final word to the young generation of leaders is that the struggle for gender equality continues. And really for our country to prosper and move to another level, we need to unleash the energies of the boys and girls of the men and the women. And I would also urge the young leaders to be patriotic. We should love our country. And to the NGOCC leadership, I say, you are one of the leaders. I say, do not seek to be listened to always, but rather continue to develop humility, to listen to your members. And I urge the NGOCC also to ensure that the youth become partners in solving the challenges of today. And in your capacity building activities, please ensure that your members also adopt the issue of peace education. Peace education is a must to counter the volatile narrative that is being spread by the social media and the politicians in particular. And the NGOCC should stay away from partisan politics, because you are fighting a cause for justice, for fairness, as I said earlier, for everybody, children, men, and women in particular, and the girl child. You can't afford to take sides. You take sides to protect these entities, these groups, the vulnerable groups in our society. And finally, I wish to commend the chairperson, board, and the entire membership of the NGOCC for organizing this important function to commemorate the 40 years of NGOCC existence, especially under the auspices of the guest of honor, the Vice President, Her Honor Mrs. Mutale Narumango, at this occasion. A milestone in the life of NGOCC and in the life of Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you.
May God bless you all.
There you have it. On today's episode of the NGOCC podcast at 40, I was privileged to interact with the former Vice President of the Republic of Zambia, Madam Inonge Mutukwa Wina, who has shared with us the history of NGOCC, the milestones achieved, but most importantly, her political career, and also encouraging the girl child, the woman out there to take up leadership roles and decision-making positions, which is very paramount to the development of the country. I have been your host, Chibesa Cecilia Munguluwe. Till next week, so long. Thank you for watching.